I don't want to be a mermaid anymore. I mean, every kid went through that phase, right? My dad thought it was hilarious. Mom treated it as just one of those childish things I'd grow out of. But my Uncle Craig actually encouraged it. Uncle Craig was my mom's oldest brother, a big man with a thick stomach and a roaring laugh. He'd bring me seashells and tell me stories about his latest catch, and he'd always listen to me tell my mermaid stories. I loved coming up with stories about this mermaid named Alora, who was pretty and looked just like me. Every time he came around, he'd ask me, "So, what has Princess Alora been up to lately?" And my face would light up like a lighthouse through the fog. For my 11th birthday, he took me on a fishing trip. Mom tried to talk him out of it, saying I'd be bored the whole time, but Uncle Craig said he'd show me a mermaid. And that was it. Uncle Craig had his own boat, and it was actually pretty decently sized, big enough for us and 3 of his friends, Abe, Bobby, and Irvin. Irvin brought his twin daughters, Ocean and River. They were quite a bit older than me, probably almost 18. His friends were quite nice, asking my name and complimenting my aerial backpack. Saturday, I fished for the first time. It was kind of boring, but Ocean and River made it fun by singing. Both of them sounded just like the mermaids I dreamed about. Ocean would encourage me to join, and even though my singing was bad. I caught a fish around mid-morning. I don't really remember what it was. All I remember is screaming that I was catching something, and my uncle was right behind me, encouraging everyone. They acted like I'd just broken a world record. Lots of cheers and slaps on the back, and Uncle Craig lifted me above his head and tossed me into the water. Apparently it was a tradition. My clothes were soaked, but I was grinning from ear to ear as he pulled me back out. This was the best birthday present I could have ever gotten. I'd almost completely forgotten about the mermaid thing. When I was shooed off to bed, Uncle Craig winked and said, "When we find a mermaid, don't worry. We'll wake you up." With a promise like that, it was almost impossible to go to sleep. I did end up drifting off sooner or later. I was awoken by my shoulder being gently shook and Abe's quiet voice. "We spotted one. Come on up, lassie." I stumbled to the deck, rubbing the sleep dust from my eyes and looking around eagerly for the mermaid. The mood had entirely changed from the day. Ocean and River were sitting at the front of the boat. My uncle was sitting to the right, while Irvin and Bobby were to the left. No one was talking or singing or even smiling. Abe pressed his finger to his lips. Shh. My mouth shut. The only sound was water lapping at the boat. Then Ocean gasped. "There she is!" I ran to the front of the boat with my uncle, my heart pounding. Was it her? Was it a real mermaid? I saw the brief tail flip before my uncle threw the nets over her. "I think we got it! Ocean, River, start singing!" The sisters joined in unison, singing a song. I didn't understand or know. The water turned to white foam as whatever was inside the net thrashed about. "Irvin, grab hold! She's a fighter!" I heard the sound of something heavy coming out of the water. The girls silenced their singing as the catch was hauled up and then dropped on the deck. It was a real-life mermaid. The creature attempted to sit up as best she could, trying to fold her tail beneath her as she looked around frantically. The lights on the boat flicked on brightly, and she flinched, covering her face. I could scarcely breathe. She was just as beautiful as I hoped. Her kelp green hair clung to her skin, patches of cerulean scales growing across her breasts and arms. Her tail, translucent and glittering in the light, royal blue with gold flecks mixed in with the smooth scales. I barely realized I was reaching up to touch it. Uncle Craig seized my hand before it got too close. "Whoa, don't touch!" The mermaid lowered her hands as she bared her teeth ferociously, and it showed I would have made a horrible mistake. Her smile was more like a shark than a pretty mermaid princess. Bobby chuckled and lifted his right hand, which was missing 3 fingers. "Rookie mistake. Been there, done that, kiddo, he said. I gulped and backed away. Uncle Craig pulled a knife from the sheath on his belt. My attention hyper-focused on that. What are you doing? I asked. The mermaid's face had gone pale. She attempted to struggle away, but the twins grabbed the net and twisted it around her, making it impossible for her to crawl to the edge of the boat and jump off. My uncle paused for a moment before he turned to me. Remember how we gutted that catch of yours this afternoon? I nodded. This is the same concept. You can go back to bed if you don't want to see. I swear, time froze. I looked at the mermaid, who was starting to shake. Her eyes looked at me. She knew what that knife meant. I knew what that knife meant. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Mermaids bleed an almost greenish red. She wasn't alive for much of it. Uncle Craig didn't prolong her suffering. He slowly began to cut her down the middle before he froze. Holy! He made the final cut fast, and I saw dozens of reddish black beads swirling about in her guts. Mermaid caviar! Uncle Craig lifted up a handful of it. I've been fishing for maids since I was your size. This is the first time I've personally harvested mermaid eggs. You're a good luck charm. I ran below deck. I collapsed outside the bathroom and my dinner splattered across the floor. The stomach acid burned as I continued to dry heave, and it took all my strength not to pass out. I don't know when the girls came down, but they didn't get mad about the mess. They cleaned me up and put me to bed. I could have thought it was a dream, except in the morning when I walked up on deck to see the mermaid tails put on ice. They'd caught one more since I was in bed. This tail was ruby red and thicker than the other. I ran my hand over the scales. They were as smooth as they looked. We caught a merman after you went to bed. I turned around to see Uncle Craig, who looked nothing but proud of his catch. You know how much last night's catch is going to pay out for me? Enough to pay for your college. Already got my own kids covered. You want anything else for your birthday? A new bike? Trip to Disneyland? I looked back at the scales. I couldn't speak. I couldn't say anything. I just remembered the look in the mermaid's eyes before the knife plunged into her chest, the spurt of blood covering my uncle's hands. I can understand if you're upset. Uncle Craig sat a hand on my shoulder. Your mom was the same when our dad took us the first time. Mermaid catching runs in the family. Has since your great-great-great-granddad. And it isn't pretty, but it's what we do. He ran a hand through my hair and I flinched. Let's go home, kid. Uncle Craig treated me to an enormous ice cream cone on the way home. My favorite flavor, cake batter. I ate it while trying to forget about the tails without mermaids still attached to them. I avoided my Uncle Craig for a few months after that. I'd hide away in my room and pretend that I was busy. This didn't stop him from leaving me presents. I slowly grew to forgive him, and soon enough we were hanging out again like old times. It's been 10 years. I'm already a published children's writer. I write books about mermaids. Kids love how they have crazy sharp teeth. Uncle Craig passed away 2 months ago from heart failure. He lived a good life, long and full of happiness. One of the 2 things he'd left me was his fishing boat. I got in my car and drove to the ocean as soon as I could. When I got there, I saw 2 grown women waiting for me. It took a second to recognize them as Ocean and River. Ocean smiled and waved. Hey, up for a fishing trip? The other thing he left me was in my pocket. A list of coordinates. Places to fish. Can't wait. I'll drive the boat.